Captain Valeth stood tall on the command deck of the Zarenth Claw, the pride of the Urusk Dominion fleet. Her golden eyes, slit like a cat's, scanned the display screen as the human prisoner was brought in. She had won many battles, but never captured a human before. She had heard stories. Humans were clever, stubborn, full of tricks. Still, she wasn't worried. The doors slid open with a hiss and 2 guards stepped in, pulling the prisoner between them. He looked around calmly, even with his hands bound, behind his back. His clothes were torn, but his face was clean. His eyes were quiet but sharp. "So this is the famous human," Valeth said, stepping forward, her tail flicking behind her. "Commander Eli Ward." He looked at her and smiled slightly. "And you must be Captain Valeth. I've heard you're not easy to impress." She raised one brow, amused. Most prisoners stayed silent or begged. This one greeted her like an old friend. "You're bold," she said, "but foolish. You're on my ship now. You lost." "I know," he replied simply. "But that doesn't mean the game is over." Valeth laughed softly. "You think this is a game?" "Everything is a game," Eli said. "Some are just played with different rules." She waved the guards away. "Take him to holding cell C. He stays under watch. I'll speak with him again later." As the guards led him away, Eli glanced back at her and said, "You'll come talk to me sooner than you think." Hours passed. Valeth tried to focus on her duties, reports, ship repairs, mapping their next route. But her mind kept going back to the human. There was something about him. He wasn't afraid. He didn't beg or threaten. He acted like he belonged here. She gave in to her curiosity and visited the holding cell. Eli was sitting calmly on the floor, his back against the wall, hands resting on his knees. He looked up and smiled. "See," he said. "Told you you'd be back." Valeth didn't smile. "Don't get too comfortable, human. This is not a friendly visit." "I know," he said. "But I figured you might have questions." She studied him. "Why didn't you resist capture? You had 10 ships, I had one. It wasn't a smart fight to take. So you gave up?" "I chose to survive," he said. "Sometimes living is more useful than dying for pride." Valeth didn't reply right away. Her people valued strength. But this kind of logic, cold, strategic, was something she respected too. "What were you doing near Urusk space?" she asked. "Exploring. Watching. We don't always attack, you know." "You expect me to believe that?" Eli shrugged. "Believe what you want. I'm just a commander, not a spy." Valeth didn't like the feeling building in her chest. It wasn't fear, it was interest. She didn't trust him, but he wasn't like the others. Most enemies broke under her stare. He met her gaze like he was reading a book. "You act like you're not a prisoner," she said. "I don't feel like one." Eli replied. She frowned. "You are in a cell." "But you're talking to me, not torturing me," he said. "That says something." Valeth folded her arms. "It says I'm patient." "No," Eli said. "It says you're curious." She turned on her heel. "Enjoy your cell, human." As she walked away, Eli called after her. "You'll see. I may be in a cage, but cages don't make you in control." Back in her quarters, Valeth stared at the stars outside her window. She should have felt proud. She had captured a human, commander. That alone would bring her honor. But instead of victory, she felt something else. A strange spark, like the start of a game she didn't remember agreeing to play. She tried to remind herself, he is just a human. A clever one, maybe, but still only human. Still his words echoed in her mind. Cages don't make you in control. She didn't like how true that sounded. The next morning, Captain Valeth stood at the central command table watching data flow across the screen. Her crew was quiet, focused. The Zarenth Claw had suffered minor damage during the battle with the humans. Engineers were busy repairing power conduits and checking life support systems. "Status?" she asked. Her officer replied, "Engines are stable. Shields at 80%. No major threats nearby. She nodded. Continue repairs, keep shields up. But her mind wasn't on the ship. It was still on the human. Down in the holding cells, Eli Ward sat cross-legged, humming softly. The guard outside his cell kept glancing at him, clearly confused. This wasn't how prisoners behaved. Prisoners complained. They shouted. This one sat like he was on vacation. Valeth arrived without warning. The door slid open and Eli looked, up with a small smile. "Captain," he greeted. "Back again already?" "I had time to waste," she said, stepping inside. "No such thing as wasted time," Eli replied. "Every moment means something." She sat on the bench opposite his cell. "You speak like a teacher." "Maybe I am," he said. "Maybe you're here to learn." She gave a short laugh. "I learn from the best warriors in the galaxy, not from a man in a cage." "Sometimes cages teach more than battlefields," Eli said calmly. "You just have to listen." Valeth stared at him for a long moment. She wasn't sure why she came. She told herself she was studying him, trying to understand his behavior. But the truth was she enjoyed their talks. He spoke to her as if they were equals, not enemies. No fear, no fake respect. It was strange and interesting. Later that day, a fire alarm rang on Deck 3. A short circuit had triggered a small blaze in the supply room. Smoke filled the corridor. A junior crew member, barely out of training, was trapped behind a sealed door. Panic spread. Eli, sitting in his cell, heard the alarm and saw the smoke through a nearby vent. He stood up quickly and called out to the guard. "Someone's trapped, I can help." The guard hesitated. "You're a prisoner." "I'm also a trained engineer," Eli said. "And if you wait too long, that crew member will die." The guard called the bridge. Valeth got the report. She growled in frustration, then said, "Let him try, but keep your eyes on him." Minutes later, Eli was running through the smoky corridor, coughing, guiding the young Urask crewman out. He found the damaged wire, shut down the power, and helped seal the vent system. The fire died. The air cleared. When Valeth arrived, she found the boy sitting on the floor, shaking but alive. Eli stood nearby, covered in soot, smiling faintly. "No one died." "You're welcome." Valeth narrowed her eyes. "You could have escaped." Eli nodded. "Yes, but I didn't." "Why?" "Because helping someone matters more than running away," he said simply. She didn't answer, just turned and walked away. But that night, she thought about it again. The next day, crew members whispered about the human. Some were thankful, others were suspicious. But everyone noticed one thing. He didn't act like a prisoner. He helped. He smiled. He gave advice when asked. A few even started greeting him with respect. Valeth saw it all. During a staff meeting, her second-in-command Krav spoke up. "This human is dangerous," he said. "He is gaining trust. He's influencing the crew." "He saved one of ours," Valeth replied. "He is still the enemy," Krav said firmly. Valeth was silent for a moment, then said, "Let him talk. Let him be seen. If he becomes a threat, I'll deal with him." Krav didn't argue again, but Valeth saw the doubt in his eyes. That evening, she visited Eli again. "You've made yourself popular," she said, arms crossed. "I'm not trying to," he replied. "I just treat people with kindness. It works. In our world, kindness is often weakness. Only if you believe fear is the only way to lead." She tilted her head. "And what do you believe?" "I believe people follow those they trust, not those they fear." Valeth studied him. "You speak of leadership like someone who's had it." Eli looked at her with calm eyes. "I've led people through worse, and I've followed good leaders too. You could be one of them." "You know nothing about me," she said. "I know you came back to talk to me. Twice." She turned to leave but paused at the door. "You're not free, Eli," she said. "Remember that." "I know," he replied with a soft grin. "But neither are you." She didn't respond. The door closed behind her. Captain Valeth sat in her private chamber, the lights dimmed, a warm cup of brewed root in her hand. Outside her window, the stars blinked like tiny eyes, watching. She should have felt powerful. She was the commander of one of the strongest ships in the Urosque Dominion. She had captured a human, a rare victory, and yet her thoughts kept circling back to him, Eli Ward. The man who sat calmly in a cell spoke gently to her crew and answered her sharp questions with quiet strength. He hadn't tried to escape. He hadn't begged. He hadn't even shouted. Instead, he talked, listened, and helped. What kind of prisoner acted like that? The next day, she went to the holding cell again. She told herself it was for information. Nothing more. Eli stood when he saw her. "Good morning, Captain," he said with a calm smile. "You look thoughtful." She ignored the comment. "You were in command before, weren't you?" "Yes," he said. "I led a crew of 60 on the Silver Dawn. Good people. Skilled and loyal. You speak like someone who misses them." "I do, but I also believe they'll be fine." Valeth narrowed her eyes. "You're either very hopeful or very foolish." "Maybe both," Eli said, sitting back down. "But I know what kind of leader I was. I trained them well." She sat on the bench outside the cell again. "You believe in trust?" "I do," he nodded. "Trust builds stronger bonds than fear." Valeth leaned forward. "Fear keeps order." "Maybe," Eli said gently. "But trust creates loyalty, real loyalty." She was quiet for a moment. No one had ever dared speak to her this way, and yet she didn't feel insulted. She felt challenged. Over the next few days, she kept returning. She asked him about Earth, about human strategy, about how they trained their soldiers. He answered honestly. Sometimes he asked questions too, about Urosque beliefs, war customs, her rise to captain. At first she gave short replies, but over time her answers grew longer. She told him about her childhood, her hard training, her first battle. He listened without judgment. It was strange. She had never talked so much to anyone. One night there was a small event in the main dining hall, a cultural exchange evening. These were rare on warships, but Valeth had ordered it to keep morale strong during long space travel. Some crew members shared Urosque stories and music. To her surprise, she found herself asking, "Bring the human, let him watch." Krav, her second-in-command, frowned. "Captain, is that wise?" "He will be guarded. I want him to see who we are." Eli sat in the corner of the hall, guarded by 2 soldiers. He listened to the songs and stories, clapping politely. When one crew member asked him about Earth music, he hummed a human tune softly. It was gentle and strange, but everyone listened. When it ended, Valeth approached him. "You made an impression," she said. "Music is universal," Eli replied. "Even enemies can share a song." Later that evening, as they walked the hall, under watch, Valeth asked him a question she never thought she would ask. "Why don't you hate me?" Eli looked at her with calm eyes. "You're doing your duty, just like I did mine. You're my prisoner." "Yes," he nodded. "But you don't treat me like one." "Not really." She didn't argue. He was right. And she didn't know why. "You confuse me, human." "That's all right," he said. "Most good friendships start with confusion." She stopped walking. "This is not friendship." Eli tilted his head. "Isn't it? You talk to me more than your own officers. You listen. You ask questions. You laugh sometimes." "I do not laugh. You almost did yesterday." She stared at him, but he wasn't mocking. He was calm, gentle, like someone playing a quiet game and waiting for her next move. In her quarters that night, Valeth couldn't sleep. She had power, she had rank, she had control. But somehow Eli had become the center of her thoughts. He wasn't forcing her. He wasn't demanding anything. He was just being himself. And it was working. Her crew respected him. Some even liked him. She remembered his words from earlier. Most good friendships start with confusion. Was that what this was, or was it something more dangerous? Had she let the human plant ideas in her mind? Had she allowed herself to grow soft? No, she thought, I am still in control. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered, then why do you feel like he's the one leading? Captain Valeth stood on the bridge of the Zarenth Claw, her golden eyes locked on the star map in front of her. The ship had entered, a strange area of space, uncharted, unstable, and filled with electric clouds that flickered like lightning storms. Her science officer had warned her to avoid it, but it was the fastest path home, and Valeth never liked delays. Proceed at half speed, she ordered. Maintain full shields. The crew obeyed, but the air on the bridge felt tense. Far below, in the lower deck, Eli sat in his cell reading a Urosk data tablet, a gift from one of the younger engineers. He had earned quiet respect over the past days. Not everyone liked him, but few could deny he brought something different to the ship. Suddenly, the floor rumbled. The lights flickered. A loud hum echoed through the ship like a deep growl from the stars. Eli stood quickly. That's not normal. On the bridge, alarms rang out. Gravitational pull rising, shouted the pilot. Unknown source. Shields dropping, said another crew member. The ship shook violently. Everyone struggled to stay on their feet. Valeth's voice cut through the chaos. Report. We've entered a rift zone, said the science officer. Some kind of hidden gravity well pulling us in. Reverse engines, she barked. No response. Controls aren't working. The stars outside twisted like liquid. The ship was being dragged deeper into the rift. Valeth's claws gripped the console. She had never seen anything like this. Below deck, the guard outside Eli's cell lost balance and hit his head on the wall, falling unconscious. The security system glitched, and the cell door opened with a hiss. Eli stepped out carefully. He didn't run. Instead, he grabbed the guard's communicator and called the bridge. This is Commander Eli Ward. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I might be able to help. There was silence for a moment. Then Valeth's voice came through, tense. What do you know, human? I've seen a rift like this before. You can't fight it, but you can ride it. Explain. Shut down the engines and angle the ship exactly 30 degrees against the pull. Let the gravity spin you, not crush you. That sounds like suicide. It worked for me once. If you trust me, let me guide you. Valeth looked at her officers. Her crew was panicking. Systems were failing. No one had a better idea. She took a deep breath. Get him to the bridge. Minutes later, Eli stood beside her, still breathing heavily from the climb. I never thought I'd be here again, he said, half smiling. Don't enjoy it too much. Valeth replied. Don't worry, he said. This place is yours. I'm just borrowing your trust. He gave clear instructions. Shut off main thrusters, reroute auxiliary power to stabilizers, rotate the ship at a slow but steady speed. The crew hesitated, but followed. Outside, the stars bent and twisted around them like a whirlpool. The ship creaked, groaned, but didn't break. The pull began to lessen. The shaking slowed. Moments later, they were free. A wide, quiet space opened before them, calm, safe. The crew broke into cheers. Valeth let out a quiet breath she hadn't realized she was holding. When the bridge quieted, she looked at Eli. You were right, she said. Again, he shrugged. Just lucky? No, she said, staring at him. Not luck. Skill, calm, and something else. He raised an eyebrow. What else? Leadership, she replied. He looked at her seriously. So, do you trust me now? She was quiet for a long moment. I'm starting to. That night, the crew held a small celebration in the lower hall. Nothing fancy, just warm food, music, and laughter. They had escaped death. That was worth something. Eli sat among them, this time not as a prisoner, but as a guest. Some clapped his shoulder, others offered food. A few still kept their distance, but they no longer saw him as an outsider. Valith watched from above, standing near the entrance. Krav stood beside her, his face hard. "You're letting him get too close," Krav said quietly. "He saved the ship," Valith replied. "We owe him that much. He'll turn on you one day. That's what humans do." Valith didn't answer. She just kept watching Eli. He laughed at something a young crew member said, his voice light and relaxed. Krav left without another word. Later, as the celebration faded, Eli found her outside the viewing window. Stars filled the space beyond. "You were brave to trust me," he said. "I didn't have a choice." "You did," Eli said. "You could have let the ship fall." She turned to him. "Maybe I wanted to see if you were truly different." And she hesitated. "You are, but I still don't know what to do with you." He smiled. "You don't have to do anything. Just keep talking to me." "You're still my prisoner," she said. "Then you're the kindest warden I've ever had." She almost smiled. Almost. Life aboard the Zarenth Claw had changed. It wasn't sudden, but it was clear. The crew moved with a bit more energy. There were fewer fights, fewer cold silences. The lower deck engineers even started playing soft music during repair shifts. And in the center of it all, walking freely through the ship under light supervision, was the human, Commander Eli Ward. Captain Valith had not officially released him. Technically, he was still a prisoner, but she no longer treated him like one. No one did. She watched him closely every day. He never gave orders, but people listened when he spoke. He didn't pretend to be one of them, but he asked questions, offered help, shared jokes. Slowly, without force, he had become part of the crew. And Valith noticed something else. She herself had changed. During a morning shift, Valith stood at the command table with her officers. They were discussing the next jump route when the navigation system flashed red. "Another gravity disturbance?" she asked. "No," said her officer. "This is strange. It's a damaged Urosc cargo ship, floating alone, no life signs." Valith narrowed her eyes. "Coordinates?" The screen displayed a blinking dot. "Very close, less than an hour's flight." "Bring us closer. Full scan, no risks." As the ship moved, Eli stepped onto the bridge, escorted by a young crew member. Valith allowed him to observe meetings now, said it was for cultural learning. But in truth, she just wanted to hear what he thought. "Another wreck?" Eli asked quietly. "Yes," Valith replied, "but something feels wrong." When they reached the wreck, the crew scanned it from a distance. "No bodies," said the science officer. "No damage either, just dead systems." "Trap?" Eli suggested. Valith gave a slow nod. "Possibly. We keep our shields up." She looked at Eli. "Thoughts?" He hesitated. "If it is a trap, it's not meant to destroy you. It's bait. Someone wants your attention." "Why?" "To test your reaction. Maybe even your loyalty to the Dominion." Valith frowned. His words cut too close. That night, she sat alone in her quarters, staring at a file Eli had sent her. It was about human leadership, specifically, how humans handle fear within their own ranks. One line stood out. "If you lead by fear, your crew obeys only when you watch. If you lead by respect, they protect you, even when you're not there." She closed the file and looked at her reflection in the glass. Was she feared or respected? Maybe. Once she had been feared. Now she wasn't so sure. The next morning she walked the lower deck without guards. Eli joined her halfway, holding a report on crew maintenance. "You read reports now?" she teased lightly. "Only yours," he joked back. They walked together, past chatting engineers and humming pipes. "Your crew has heart," Eli said. "They just needed space to show it." "They follow because I'm their captain," Valith replied. "They follow you now," Eli said softly, "because they care what you think." She looked at him. "And you? Why do you help?" "Because I see something in you," he said. "Something rare." Don't flatter me. I'm not, he replied. I'm just telling the truth. That evening, something unexpected happened. The young crew member who had helped Eli before, an engineer named Ral, approached the bridge trembling. Captain, he said, I found something, a message hidden in the navigation data. A secret signal. Valeth stepped forward. What kind of signal? It's from someone inside the Dominion, Ral said. They want to remove you. They think you're changing. Krav, her second in command, stepped into the room quietly. His face was unreadable. Valeth read the decoded message. It spoke of distrust, of fear, of how her kindness toward a human made her weak. She stood still. Her own people were beginning to question her loyalty. Later, Eli found her alone on the viewing deck. You saw the message, he said softly. Yes. You expected this? A part of me did, she said. I've been different lately. You've been yourself, Eli replied. That scares people who prefer power without heart. She looked out at the stars. They think I'm no longer Urosque enough. Maybe you're more than that now. She turned to him. This started with you. He smiled. No, this started when you chose to listen. She stared at him for a moment, then said, You speak like you're not my prisoner. I'm not sure I ever was, Eli said. She didn't argue. The next morning, she stood in front of her crew. I have read the message. Some believe I am weak, that I have lost my way. The room was quiet, but I say this. Strength is not only in claws and commands. Strength is also in choice, in learning, in trust. We survived because we worked together, human and Urosque, and I will not turn back to fear. There was a pause. Then someone clapped, then another, and another. Soon the whole room was filled with the sound. Valeth looked at Eli, who stood in the back, smiling softly. She had not planned to say so much. But somehow, it felt right. The Zarenth claw was alive with tension. Captain Valeth could feel it in the air, the quiet whispers, the sideways glances, the way some crew members lingered too long in the corridors, speaking in low voices. Her second in command, Krav, had grown more distant and cold. He no longer hid his disapproval of her leadership or her growing closeness with Eli. Valeth knew the loyalists within the crew were uneasy. The old ways were being challenged, and some were ready to fight back. She stood on the bridge watching the stars slide past the window. Her crew was strong, but division was dangerous. One evening, during a routine systems check, alarms blared through the ship. Security breach in lower decks, shouted a guard. Valeth rushed to the control panel. The cameras showed a group of armed crew members led by Krav, moving quickly through the corridors. Their faces were hard, filled with anger. Mutiny, Valeth said quietly. The ship's communications crackled with messages from the mutineers. Captain Valeth, you are relieved of command. Step down immediately. We no longer trust your rule. Valeth's heart pounded. She clenched her fists. Prepare the defense, she ordered. No one leaves the bridge without my permission. Eli appeared at her side, calm and steady. This isn't just about you, he said. They fear what you represent. Valeth nodded. They fear change. They don't understand loyalty built on respect, Eli said. We'll show them. The mutineers sealed off key sections of the ship and took control of the security system. Valeth's loyal officers were fewer in number but fiercely dedicated. She called her trusted crew to the command deck. We stand together, or we fall divided. They prepared defenses and secured vital systems. But the mutineers had one advantage, the POW element of surprise. Meanwhile, Eli moved quietly through the ship's passages, rallying those who still believed in Valeth's leadership. He spoke to crew members, reminding them of what they had survived, what they had built. Remember, he said softly to a small group, we fight for the future, not the past. His calm presence inspired hope. The ship shook again as the mutineers launched their attack. Lasers flashed in narrow corridors. Shouts echoed. The battle was close and fierce. Valeth directed her forces from the bridge, coordinating counterattacks. She moved like a shadow, fast, precise, and fearless. At one point, Krav appeared on a security feed sneering. "You lost your way, Captain. You've brought a human into our home. That is betrayal." Valeth's voice was steady. "I lead all who serve this ship. That is strength." Eli's group managed to reach the central control room, fighting past guards. He connected to the ship's systems and began overriding the mutineers' lockdowns. "Hold the line," Valeth called out. "We are not beaten." Her crew's spirit held strong. Finally, after hours of battle, the mutineers were pushed back. Krav was captured and brought before Valeth. "You have failed your people," she said coldly. He spat at her feet. "You will regret this." Valeth stared him down. "No, you will regret your choices." The ship was quiet again. Valeth looked at Eli, standing beside her, his face calm but tired. "You saved us," she said quietly. "We saved each other," Eli replied. In the days that followed, Valeth worked to rebuild trust. She held meetings, with the crew listening to concerns and sharing her vision of unity. The mutiny was a harsh lesson. Change was never easy, but she was determined. Together, Human and Urosk would move forward. The Zarenth claw hummed softly in the quiet of deep space. The battle was over, the mutiny crushed, but the scars remained, not just on the ship's metal walls, but in the hearts of those who survived. Captain Valeth stood on the bridge, watching the stars drift by. Her golden eyes reflected strength, but also something new, a calm resolve. Beside her, Eli Ward leaned against the console, tired but alert. He had been more than a prisoner. He was now a trusted ally. Together, they had faced the greatest test of their command. "Are you ready?" Valeth asked quietly. Eli nodded. "For what comes next?" The ship's communication panel beeped. The Dominion Council had sent a transmission. They wanted answers, a report on the mutiny and the ship's current status. Valeth took a deep breath. It was time to show them the future. In the meeting room, Valeth stood before the holographic council members. Their faces were cold, skeptical. "You lost control of your ship," one said sharply. "How can we trust you lead the Dominion?" Valeth met their eyes without fear. "I did not lose control. I changed how control is earned." The council murmured. "The mutiny was a result of fear of change, fear of strength through unity." She gestured to Eli. "This human did not weaken us. He helped us grow stronger. Our crew is united because they respect all who serve, not because they fear one." A council member raised a hand. "Humans have long been considered unreliable." Valeth smiled slightly. "They are more than that. They teach us that leadership is not domination but trust, not fear but loyalty." Her words were met with silence, then slowly nods. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. Back on the bridge, Eli looked at Valeth. "You changed them. You changed yourself," she smiled. "And you helped." He laughed softly. "I didn't tame you." "No," she said, flicking her tail. "I let you." Days passed. The crew settled into a new rhythm. Valeth walked among them openly, listening and learning. The ship's energy had shifted. Hope replaced fear. Strength was no longer only in power, but in trust. One evening, Eli and Valeth stood together in the observation deck. "Do you think we can really change the Dominion?" Eli asked. Valeth looked at the stars. "We already have." He smiled. "Then the game is just beginning." And so, aboard the Zarenth Claw, a new chapter began. A story of humans and Urosk standing together, not as enemies, but as allies. Where leadership was earned through respect, and strength was measured by unity. The human had not been tamed like a kitten. Instead, they had tamed each other, with trust, with courage, and with hope.